Can you imagine a being so convincing, so influential, that he managed to drag a third of the angels in heaven into a rebellion against the creator of the universe? What if I told you that this same being, now stripped of his heavenly glory, walks among us, not in visible form, but through carefully planned ideas, behaviors, and distractions? Now think, why has Earth become the new battleground between good and evil? And even more, if God had already defeated Satan in heaven, why did he allow this enemy to gain access to humanity? The answer is profound. The earth was chosen because there was a creation on it that could love, obey, and choose. And God, being just and loving, does not force loyalty. He offers the truth, but also allows each being to decide for themselves. The moral conflict needed to be revealed in front of the whole universe. After being cast out of heaven, Satan didn't back down. He was wounded, but still motivated by one desire: to tarnish God's name and destroy what had been perfectly created. And where was his opportunity? In Eden, a pure place, inhabited by Adam and Eve, beings shaped by the hands of the Creator, surrounded by beauty, harmony, and direct communion with the Most High. But Satan didn't appear as a hostile invader. He took on an intriguing, cunning form. Disguised as a serpent, a symbol of wisdom in ancient culture, he waited for the moment when Eve was vulnerable, separated from her partner, distracted by her natural curiosity. He didn't impose or order. He asked questions. He planted doubts. He planted the idea that God might be hiding something good. With a few words, he distorted the truth, and Eve believed. The enemy had won its first battle on earth, not with violence, but with deception. And so a new phase of the conflict began, a war that is now being fought inside the heart of every human being. Imagine heaven in silence. The angels watching, with attention and awe, what was happening on the newly created blue planet. They had witnessed Satan's expulsion. They had seen his fall. But now, what they saw was even more tragic. The same enemy that had rebelled against God had managed to seduce the first human beings, and it all started with a simple conversation, a question that turned into an insinuation, a doubt that turned into disobedience. The truth is that Eva wasn't forced. She was convinced, and that's what makes deception all the more powerful. The serpent didn't roar. It whispered, "You're not going to die. God knows the day you eat, your eyes will open." It was a subtle mix of lie and half-truth, the perfect recipe for disaster. The moment Eva gave in, something changed. Innocence disappeared. The peace that surrounded that garden was shattered by one choice. And when Adam, out of love and hesitation, also took of the fruit, the whole of humanity was put on a collision course with evil from heaven. The scene was devastating. The angels, who until then had celebrated the creation of the earth with songs of praise, now watched as sin entered the world. And Satan? He rejoiced. He had won. Human beings, made in the image of God, now shared his rebellion. But even in this moment of pain, the rescue plan was already at work. Christ, even before the foundation of the world, had offered himself as the definitive solution. And while the enemy believed he had conquered the heart of humanity, God was beginning to outline the most surprising story of all: redemption. Earth had become the new battlefield. But contrary to what the enemy expected, God would not give up on humanity. The conflict wasn't over. It had just changed scenery. The decision to disobey not only opened the door to suffering, but redesigned the entire reality of humanity. What was lightness became weight. What was peace became battle. The whole of creation groaned at the consequences. Nature lost its balance. The land once fertile on its own would now require effort, sweat, and perseverance, the pains of childbirth, the struggle for survival, the fear of death. All this became part of the new scenario. With a firm voice, God announced the consequences. But even in the harshest words, there was a trace of hope. Adam and Eve were covered in fur robes, an act that represented much more than protection. It was the first sign that an innocent person would be sacrificed in place of the guilty. This image would be engraved in humanity's memory. Someone would have to pay the price, and that someone would be sent by God. The departure from the garden wasn't just geographical. It was a historical transition. A new era had begun. God placed cherubs with flaming swords in front of Eden, not to prevent access out of cruelty, but to protect the tree of life. If human beings ate from it in a state of sin, they would live eternally in separation, and that would be eternal suffering. Even outside paradise, the divine presence was still at work. Now, in a different way, but still present. The tension between good and evil soon revealed itself among Adam and Eve's own children. Cain and Abel, created with the same love, followed different paths. Abel chose obedience, faith, and sacrifice according to God's will. Cain, on the other hand, presented the fruit of his own efforts, rejecting the plan established by God. Wounded pride led to anger, and anger, fueled by envy, culminated in the first murder. Abel's blood cried out from the earth, revealing that spiritual warfare was no longer confined to heaven. It now dwelt among us. And as humanity grew, evil also spread. But even in the midst of darkness, God did not cease to act. He began to raise up men and women who would not bow down. People who, in the midst of chaos, dared to walk with him. Who were these first believers? How did they resist the spreading corruption? That's what we'll find out in the next part. The world was never the same after the departure from Eden. Time passed, generations arose, and with them came an increase in evil, indifference, and violence. Cities grew, names multiplied, but hearts grew distant. People sought fame, pleasures, and conquests, completely forgetting the God who had created all things. God's pain was not only in disobedience, but in contempt. Humanity, which was supposed to reflect his image, was now walking towards the abyss, without looking back, without repentance. Amidst the noise of sin, there was a softer sound, the sound of faith, of fidelity. A small group, almost forgotten, decided to keep the connection with the Creator alive. Seth, the son born after Abel's death, became the beginning of a new lineage, a people who called on the name of the Lord. And among the descendants of Seth, men emerged who marked history with their obedience. Enoch stands out. Enoch. While everyone was chasing after the pleasures of the world, he chose something different. He walked with God. It wasn't a faith of words, but of steps, a lifetime of communion choice by choice, day after day. And what happened to him? He was taken by God, without going through death. A powerful statement. It is still worth walking with the Creator. But while the faithful persevered, the rest of humanity sank lower and lower. The boundaries between right and wrong began to blur. The lineage of the faithful began to mingle with that of the rebels. And little by little, corruption spread like a mist. The earth was filled with violence, selfishness, and destruction. God looked at the world and saw that human thoughts were continually evil. A feeling of sadness invaded the divine heart. But there was still one man, a righteous man, one who found favor in God's eyes. Who was he? Why did God choose him for such a great mission? In the next part, you'll learn the story of Noah, the man who built an ark in a world that didn't believe in rain. If this video has touched your heart, please like it, share it, and subscribe to the channel. Here, every Bible story comes to life. That's the purpose of our channel. The Word as you've never seen it.